One. All right, everybody. I'm Jeremy Platt. I'm joined by my friend Niall Ty, and the NFL season is here, and we are getting ready for a preview of Week 1 for the Between the Tackles podcast. Niall, how are you feeling after Chiefs losing to the Lions on opening night?
I'm feeling fantastic. I'm just happy the NFL's back. And for anyone out there that may judge us for, recording post Thursday night, we've all got jobs. We do this for fun. Let us be. All right. So Lions take down the Chiefs 21-20. The biggest thing to me was wow, the Chiefs need Travis Kelce and they need him back quick. Like their weapons on offense outside of Patrick Mahomes look a lot thinner when they don't have their second best offensive player on the field. So it was an alarming, like, usually when they've got the third and short, even a fourth and short, and they're on the opponent's side of the field, that's the Travis Kelce territory. And I don't want to say it looked lost, but like someone tweeted out, it was like, man, they usually turn that into seven, and they had a couple field goals, and it ended up costing them the game.
Yeah, totally. And it's not like Mahomes wasn't making the plays because I mean, he looked. I thought Mahomes looked as good as ever, but it was more so
Yeah,
the receivers not being able to catch the ball. I think Kadarius Toney had what three, four, two,
he
three.
had three drops. Yeah,
Yeah, that's like, and I don't put this on Mahomes. I mean, it's also like Sky Moore had a few drops, uh, and then on defensively for the Chiefs, I mean, you could really tell they were missing Chris Jones the way David Montgomery was able to. It wasn't like he had any explosive runs, but just like the consistent like 6, 7 yards, and then yeah, I just it really felt like they were missing their two stars. Like it was very noticeable.
yeah, 100%. But then on the other side of the ball, I mean, what a win for the Lions. I think that's a win that you can carry throughout the rest of the season. And you saw how excited the players were. Jared Goff was turning around after kneeling the ball and hyping up the Lions fans that were there, and all the players were celebrating on the field. Like, I, that's it. It might be too early to tell, and I guess you never really know after week one, especially with the Chiefs missing two of their best players. But that feels like a win that changed the course and the discourse around the Lions season because they had a lot of hype coming in. They ended last season strong. Everyone was pretty high on them. Some people doubted them, saying, "Look, I don't even think they're the second or even third best team in their division. If you like the Packers or Bears, I don't know, but." That felt like a big win for the Lions. Felt like a big win for Dan Campbell. I was happy to see Jared Goff play well. I always like watching Jared Goff play. Amon Ra, just so good. That
Yeah.
that guy is incredible. The thing that was funny to me is so they start the game off. Dan Campbell calls a fake punt inside their own 20-yard line with 9 minutes left in the first quarter. But then later on, which was a ballsy move, but then later on in the game, they're on the Kansas City 40-yard line, 4th and 3, and they choose to punt. And then later in the game, they're basically in the same situation on Kansas City's 43-yard line, 4th and 1, and then they go for it. So seems like Dan Campbell was just like calling plays
Yeah.
on a whim, didn't really have a strategy. Like it seems like you would want to punt on your own 17 and then go for it on Casey's 40, but I don't know. It worked. So who am I to judge?
Yeah, and I mean, I think the people who really love football know who Ben Johnson is, and it was fun to see him back in his bag.
That guy's going to
Uh,
be a head coach next season.
oh
That
yeah,
guy
100%.
will be a head
He
coach
had
next. I was
Amon
shocked
Ra.
he came back this year.
I tweeted it. He had Amon-Ra St. Brown lined up as a fullback, and usually sometimes teams will put like their good players in the backfield, their position players in the backfield to like have him like run a play, and then he just had him like block on a 3rd and 2, like a pretty crucial in 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. I was just like, what is going on? And I was like, oh, they're clearly going to throw the ball to Amon-Ra St. Brown. They just run it up the middle with David Montgomery, and he's at fullback. I was like, okay, this is awesome. The
Yeah.
one thing I was a little
Yeah.
surprised is like the lack of usage for Jahmyr Gibbs because when Gibbs had the ball, dude, he looked awesome, and it just didn't seem
He
like
would break one for 20 yards and then sit on the sideline for 15 straight plays.
yeah.
It was alarming to me. Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just like the what you want to make it like start him a little slowly because he's probably gonna get a lot of work by the end of the year. But I mean, they won, so it's okay. But I would anticipate him getting more looks after looking at the film.
Yeah, 100%. I think that he gets more looks as the season goes on, but it's also very apparent that they like to use Dave Montgomery as a pass pro
Mhm.
running back, and Jahmyr Gibbs is a little bit smaller. He's a lot quicker. So I think in terms of pass protection, Dave Montgomery is definitely the guy, even though he got lit up by Nick Bolton that
Yeah, I
one
saw
play.
that.
Oh my God. The other thing I want to talk about quickly before we move on was the Jawan Johnson, the lineup
Oh,
and the false start situation. Like when they brought in the rules official and they were like, so we want to touch on something we saw earlier. And they basically, for anyone that didn't see it, they basically asked, one, is he lined up in a legal position? And if you don't know, the tackles on the end, their helmet has to be at the center's waistline. So they don't have to be on the line of scrimmage, but their helmet has to be at the center's waistline. And the rules official gets on and they asked him if it was legal, and he goes, absolutely not. And then so not only is he lining up too far back, which gives him an advantage, he was jumping early pretty much every single play.
mhm.
So that's going to be something to look out for the entire season, because if the refs aren't calling it, I would assume that every team is going to use it because it's a huge advantage. You saw the Lions moving Aiden Hutchinson off the edge into the middle of the line so that he could go up against someone that wasn't essentially getting a head start on him.
Yeah. Yeah, and, I mean, I thought it was funny that they didn't really call him for a penalty until there was, like, the last drive of the game.
But
Um,
it was also the
yeah,
most
most
obvious
apparent.
one. Like he was
Yeah.
by far
Yeah, and I
better.
and I know, like, people had some complaints about Lane Johnson doing it last year, so, towards the end of the year, so it should be int like you said, every year it seems like officials make an emphasis to point out a different rule. I remember last year it had to be the, like, illegal offensive lineman downfield and whatnot, uh,
Yeah.
so I'll be curious to see if, this makes a big change, but I think I feel pretty good about, how this Thursday night game went. I think we touched on it a lot, and I kinda wanna get going into, this Sunday's slate of games I'm super excited for. And
Let's do it.
we're gonna start off in Cincinnati or in Cleveland rather, with the Bengals going to Cleveland to, face the Browns. And it's important to note that Joe Burrow at the start of this game got the biggest deal in NFL history. He's the highest paid player in NFL history. 5 years and then 219 million guaranteed, which is, I mean, I know there's incentives, but really the 219 number is that the really shocking number. Uh, and yeah, I think that's just a vote of confidence for Cincinnati. It's not like they were worried about him holding out or anything, but just yeah, that's awesome for Joe. And you got any thoughts on the contract?
Yeah, I mean it's incredible for Joe. I do think though, like we always talk about like what makes a team so dangerous, and there's always the notion that a quarterback on his rookie contract is like a real true window for a team to win games. And now that Joe's making 55 million, I think it is, a year. So I mean, it's incredible for him, but I'm curious to see how it affects the build of their team long term, because I think Jamar Chase is eligible for an extension
Mhm.
next year. So they've got a lot of guys that need to be paid, and they're a relatively small market. So we'll see how that goes for the future. But for this year and for Joe, it's incredible. One thing I did want to touch on for Joe though, and it relates more to this game specifically, and I guess I'm kind of hinting at who I like in this game, but this is the third straight season that Joe Burrow has missed training camp. 3 years ago is because of his knee. He had surgery, was recovering, and then last year appendix burst in training camp, so he was out for most of that. And then this year he had the calf injury, and then was recently cleared to play week one just a couple of days ago. So I I don't know if it's going to be a slow start for the Bengals this year, but for this game, I do like the Browns and taking the point. The Browns are at home; they're 2.5 point underdogs, depending on where you get the line. But I actually like the Browns in this game. I know that the reports for the Browns in training camp haven't been great when it comes to Deshaun Watson, and last season was clearly a mess, putting him in after a suspension. But I think the Browns roster is really solid this year. And another thing that I like is Kareem Hunt is out of the picture, which maybe long term for Nick Chubb might be an issue, but for maybe like a fantasy perspective or just in terms of like how often he's going to get, I think his touches per game is going to go up significantly this year. I mean, they've got Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong who they traded for this offseason, backing him up. So I think Nick Chubb's slated for a big game and a big season.
Yeah. And another addition that they had to their offense was Elijah Moore, who in the preseason it looked like they were moving him almost like a Curtis Samuel-esque, where they have him in the backfield and then out wide and then the slot. And I'm curious to see if Elijah Moore can end up being the player we thought he was going to be for the Jets leading up to last season. This is also for Cincinnati. One thing I wrote down was that this is like the third year in a row where they've also had like a different offensive line. This year they got Orlando Brown, and week 1 he's got Myles Garrett. So curious to see if Joe Burrow can get off to a faster start than last year. And then the final thing I wanted to touch on was Burrow started getting his rhythm midway towards in the middle point of last season rather, and carried it all the way through the end of last year as well. And that was because he was learning to take the short game against the 2 high safeties. And I'm just curious to see whether or not defenses will still approach him with the 2 high safety look. And just because he was so efficient by the end of last year, and it seemed like Bengals were putting together like 6 to 7 to 8 minute drives, drive after drive after drive. And he was willing to settle for those shorter passes. And I'm curious to see if defenses will choose to approach him differently this year. But yeah.
What do you like in this game?
In this game, I'm going to disagree with you here. I got Bengals -2, 2.5 either way.
Really? Okay. Yeah, I think this is a big game for. I mean, I think both of these teams this season. I think their division's really strong. I'm pretty high on the Steelers this year as well, and I also like what the Ravens did in the offseason in regards to their offense. So I think overall this is going to be one of the better divisions in football. And I think this game, obviously, it's a divisional game. They know each other very well, but it could go a long way this season. And I could be wrong, but I'm a little bit higher on the Browns this season than everyone else. I think for me, it's like the Browns and Steelers are maybe a little bit higher up, and then the Bengals. Like I think I have it more even. So I'm curious because it's week 1, so you never really know. But I do think that Deshaun Watson will be better this year with another season under his belt, being able to practice with the team preseason XYZ. Obviously, he wasn't able to last year because of everyone knows why. But so yeah, I've got the Browns +2.5. So we've got I believe that's our first disagreement of the year.
Yeah.
Wait, also, who did you have? Just out of curiosity, I thought that the Chiefs were going to win the Thursday night game. Who did you think was going to win the Thursday night game?
I'm not just saying this. I had Detroit because of
There you go.
because of the Travis. Once I found out Travis Kelce was not playing, I honestly thought that I thought it'd be more of a shootout type of thing where the Chiefs didn't have someone to step up at the end. But it was still a close game, but I wouldn't consider what happened a shootout. But I still liked Detroit to win.
Okay, well you're up 1-0 then. I'll make sure to note that one down.
Yeah, I probably.
Okay, on to our next divisional game of the week 1 NFL season. We've got Panthers at Falcons. Falcons are 3.5-point favorites. What are you looking for in this game?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's the rookie show, in my opinion. I'm excited to see both Bryce Young and Bijan Robinson, as I'm sure you are.
Yep.
I was super high on both those. I think both those guys coming out of the draft. I think everybody was, and I'm just curious to see how Bryce Young's weapons around him, whether it be Jonathan Mingo, Miles Sanders, Adam Thielen, help him. I think he's gonna get a lot of production this year. He's not the flashiest or most explosive player in the league. He's a vet, and I think having that vet guy where Bryce Young knows he can lean on, I think that's where I think that's super valuable. But yeah, now this game.
Yeah, I completely agree. The only thing that I think these two teams are headed in somewhat of a different direction. Obviously, the Panthers just took Bryce Young, #1 overall pick. But I think this is a team that's still rebuilding, and you can look at a lot of different parts of the team and say that. But the biggest thing for me is like their O-line in the preseason looked this week would be something like Bryce Young had no, I think he was making all the right reads. And obviously, it's a very small sample size, but he was throwing the ball out of bounds when he was pressured. He was checking down, but it just created no opportunity for him to really show his game. So I think that's going to be a big piece of this game. Another thing is you mentioned the Panthers' weapons, but as of the Wednesday practice report, Adam Thielen and DJ Chark weren't practicing due to injuries. So I do agree that Adam Thielen will be a guy that Bryce Young can build trust with throughout the season, and I think that he can almost be a safety valve. That's a
Yeah,
veteran wide receiver is a rookie quarterback's quote unquote best friend. But if he's banged up in this game, he's a little bit older to begin with. He's not the fastest guy in the world. You kind of touched on that, so I think that would be a big piece of this game. Um, and then I think the biggest thing for me is the Desmond Ritter question mark. Obviously, he came in from Mariota at the end of last season, and by all accounts wasn't great. But then he's got another year under the system. I'm excited for Arthur Smith. I loved
yeah,
all of his offseason press conferences. Like he came out, and for
Austin.
anyone that didn't see, they posted like the depth chart. Oh yeah, his mustache was electric, but they posted the depth chart and they have Cordell Patterson listed as position J for Joker. So he's just throwing all out to the wind. They finally put Bijan as the running back one. But yeah, I've got the Falcons in this one to win and to cover the 3.5 point spread. I feel pretty strongly about that one. So I like the Falcons week one against Panthers.
And I'm not just doing this to be different, but I like the Panthers. I'm a big Bryce Young believer. I like them plus 3.5. I actually like them as my underdog of the week too. So
Wow. All
to
right.
to remind people of how we do it at the show, underdog of the week isn't just against the spreads to win straight up. So yeah, I'm picking the Panthers to win straight up. I think it's gonna be a close game, and I think despite despite the number one pick not winning a game, I believe it was like 21 years. Starting, sorry, number one pick from the previous year, who was a quarterback, not winning his first career start in the week one. I'm going with Bryce Young. I'm a believer, and I also like have a ton of questions, like you said about Desmond Ritter. I mean, I wasn't sold by what I saw last year. I know there was some ups, but I also like I don't know. I think both of them are starting at a very similar place, and I trust Bryce Young more than I trust Desmond Ritter, which is crazy to say because Young hasn't played a single game in the NFL. But yeah,
I mean, I think most people would agree with you.
yeah. All right, moving on. We're gonna go to another divisional game. Jaguars, who are 5-point favorites going to Indianapolis against the Colts and Anthony Richardson's first career start. I don't think we have to spend too much time unless you have some surprise, but uh, I like the Jaguars this week. I think they're going to win not only by 5 but by a lot more. I was just looking at I mean, I don't know who. I guess you could say Michael Pittman rather, but I don't know who's going to help Anthony Richardson out. Deion Jackson's starting, Jonathan Taylor's obviously out, and then the Colts secondary is looking at it, I'm like, I don't know how they're gonna stop Calvin Ridley, who looks like he hasn't played in a while, but like because of the juice, like he just looks so juiced up this year. And I have Trevor Lawrence as my player of the week. I think he's gonna ball out this week. I think the Jags are gonna take care of business. What do you think?
We're 0 for 3 on agreements here. I want to preface this by saying that I think the Jags are going to win this game, and I do love this Jags offense. I have a Trevor Lawrence long shot MVP ticket sitting in my open bets, but I do think there's a piece of it that the Jaguars are a little bit overhyped because of all the question marks, or sorry, because of all the additions on offense. Obviously, they got Calvin Ridley back. He's looked incredible throughout training camp by all reports. Evan Ingram re-signed. They've got Christian Kirk, Zay Jones. So Trevor Lawrence looked like he was coming into himself at the end of last year. And then Travis Etienne, they drafted Tank Bigsby. So this offense, I think, is going to be electric this year. But I do think that they're a little bit overvalued just in terms of the number. So I do think that the Colts will be able to pull it within 5. So I think the Jags are going to win, but I think it's going to be within 5 points. And then also if you're looking at maybe like a fantasy play, or if you gamble, Jeremy, I know you can't gamble, but for the people that can, if the Anthony Richardson over under for rushing yards is somewhere in the 45 to 50 range. I know it's a pretty wide spread when you're betting lines, but I do think if it's in that range, you should take the over this week. I think it could be something like he gets that line, and then we're not going to see that line again for the rest of the season. I think he's very raw, and that is maybe not the best thing for the Colts, but in terms of the rushing yard props, I do think he'll have a big week on the ground. So I like the Colts +5. I don't feel too strong about it, but I do think they'll be able to get some kind of garbage time touchdown and cover. Maybe put it within 4 points. So
Yeah, and you touched on it, when a guy's so raw, it's like he'll just lean on what he trusts, and for Anthony Richardson, the one thing we know he can trust is his athleticism and his ability to get out of the pocket and create with his legs. So yeah, that should be a good one to watch.
all right. Next game we've got Bucks Vikings. It's in Minnesota. Vikings are 5.5 point favorites. This one's interesting. Obviously, the Bucks kind of went through a whirlwind in the offseason. They've got Baker Mayfield starting at quarterback, which is a pretty stark difference from Tom Brady. So they downgrade quite a bit at that position. Vikings coming off a season where they overexceeded expectations by quite a large bit. The big thing that I had noticed for this game is that the Vikings did let go of some veterans on defense, which I thought was smart, but also might hurt them in the short term. Their secondary and D line aren't great this season, which might cause them to blitz a little bit more in this game. And contrary to popular belief, Baker Mayfield against the blitz is actually a very good quarterback. So we might disagree again on this game, but I like the Bucks +5 or 5.5. I think it might be 6 at some points, but I think that the Vikings are probably going to win this game, but I do like the Bucks plus the points. I'm a big believer in week one underdogs when people aren't too sure about the lines. You get a lot of soft lines, and I think that this is one of them. I think we saw it last season. The Vikings had 11 one-score wins, so I think this could be a close game. Vikings pull it out, but I like the Bucks cover.
Yeah, you just touched on it. I think the record last year for underdogs against the spread was like 11-6 in week one.
Yeah.
It's just because there's so much variety, lack of continuity that happens in the off season. And once again, I'm going to disagree with you. And I mean, really, I think I know they let go of some vets, but I mean, not actually a good amount of vets, but I think they got better still. Like offensively, obviously, you bring in Jordan Addison. You do lose a huge piece in Dalvin Cook, but I think from an efficiency standpoint, I remember I saw something where it was like decline on like yards after contact, decline on like miles per hour consistently ran, like stuff like that. And even though he's still productive and Dalvin Cook, I don't think the drop off to Alexander Madison is going to be too big. For Kirk Cousins, it's the second year in O'Connell's system, and I think he's only going to get better. There's a huge jump in when you go into a new year with the same system. And then defensively, I mean, the Vikings were god awful last year, but they bring in Brian Flores, and I think he's going to have a huge impact on this defense. And certain coaches are able to coach around a lack of talent. And while the Vikings aren't the most talented team defensively, they brought in Byron Murphy, they brought in Marcus Davenport, your guy Mekhi Blackman. He looked awesome in preseason.
And Jordan Addison.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna have an incredible defense, but I think it'll be somewhat of a step up than last year. So I like the Vikings, but also not too confident, to be completely honest.
Fair enough.
All right, moving on. We got Titans at Saints. Saints are 3-point favorites. This is my lock of the week. I feel pretty confident in saying that I think the Saints are going to take care of business. Titans offensive line looks like one of the worst offensive lines on paper. and the Saints have such a veteran defensive line. If there's one thing I can trust, it's that Saints defensive line. I trust Derek Carr personally. I don't think he's good, like a game necessarily. Or yeah, I do think he's a game changer. I don't think he's an MVP quarterback, but I think he is a guy who can come in and win games for the Saints. And I just don't know what to expect from the Titans offense. And while the Saints got a new quarterback this year, I have a good idea of what the Saints are going to be. What about you now?
I'm not just saying this to say this, but I have Titans
Awesome.
+3 as my lock of the week, and then I also have Titans as my underdog of the week.
Oh, that's awesome.
This is kind of keeping the same trend, but to be honest, I just trust their coach. Like he's so incredible, and I think that last season they overseeded expectations with a ton of injuries. They come in to this season being much healthier. DeAndre Hopkins is the best weapon that Tannehill has had since they let go of AJ Brown. Derrick Henry, I think his yards per carry went up last season, so he's shown no signs of slowing down. Obviously, there's some questions on the O line. Their defensive line, they were the best team against the run last season. And the Saints don't have Kamara, Derek Carr's in the first year of a new system. I don't have the stat off the top of my head, but there's a pretty alarming number when Derek Carr is in the first year of a new system. So like that includes last year when he was with Josh McDaniels and the Raiders, and then this year he comes in. So, we've disagreed so far in our first 5 games. So either one of us is going to be a genius and the other one's going to be an idiot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, one of us is going 5-0, the other is going 0-5. So, but yeah, I feel pretty strongly about this one, to be honest. Like, I don't know. I love Vrabel. I think the Titans sneaky are going to be really good again this year. I don't know why they wouldn't be, to be completely honest. They lost quite a few games last year with Malik Willis at quarterback. He wasn't quite ready to come in. So they get Tannehill back. I like the Titans, and I know I missed the podcast where you guys kind of went over each division, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think between the Jaguars and Titans this season. So I like the Titans +3 at the Saints, and I like them to win outright, to be honest.
Yeah, the two last things I want to touch on for that game. One, I'm curious to see how the Titans use Tajay Spears because he looked incredible in preseason. I know he was like a big sleeper for a lot of guys coming out of college out of Tulane. And then for the Saints, I just want to I feel like we ask this question every year, but is Michael Thomas back? Like, you know, he looked good in the 3 games he played last year, but it seemed like Olave stepped into that number 1 role. But yeah, just good question to think about.
Yeah, I mean, when Michael Thomas was healthy, I mean, he only played three games last season, but I think he averaged like 75 or something yards a game. Like he was really good in fantasy. And we say this every year where it's like, well, if he's healthy, he could be great. He could be great. So I guess we'll see, but I'm not super high in the Saints this year. So I like the Titans outright in this one. All right. And then our next game, I have a feeling we're going to disagree on this one too. It's 49ers at Steelers. Steelers are -2. I like the Steelers this year. I'm a big believer in the Steelers. I think they're going to make the playoffs. I think they're going to shock people a little bit. This one was a tough one for me because I also do think the Niners are probably the Super Bowl favorite in the NFC, in my opinion. I like what they did this offseason, even though they did let go of Trey Lance. But I know it's just preseason and we can't overreact, but Kenny Pickett looked amazing. I think he had 5 drives, 5 touchdowns. Mike Tomlin is a dog. I know I kind of just touched on it with Vrabel, but again, I love him as a coach, even though, Shanahan's a great coach too. So don't want to take away anything from him, but I'm in on Kenny Pickett. I'm excited for George Pickens. I think Deontay Johnson is going to be incredible, obviously, if he can stay healthy, but I like this. I like the Steelers +2 in this one.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously I'm extremely biased with the 49ers, but I like the 49ers this week. With that being said, I am not very confident because the Niners are a team that they don't usually start off super hot. Last year, the year, I mean, it seems like every year, it takes a little while for Kyle Shanahan to get his groove. and like I said, Brock Purdy, he didn't really play. He didn't have like that. He didn't have that second year off season that is like huge in the developmental process for all NFL players. Um, and I'm curious about Bosa, who just signed a huge deal. Congrats to him. But like, how's his wear and tear going to be? Obviously he's going to be in super good shape because he's one of the most well conditioned players in the NFL. But I mean, there's a difference between being in good shape and being in football shape. I'm curious to see how he performs late in the game and in the fourth quarter when he's getting tired and he's getting hit a ton. How his body holds up. And then for the Steelers, I'm a huge fan of Nick Herbig, their edge rusher that they drafted from
He
Wisconsin
looked
second round.
incredible in
Yeah, he
preseason.
looks awesome. And then him on the other with TJ Watt on the other side. Niners got a new right tackle, Colton McKivitz, who I don't really know what to anticipate from. Like that could be. I mean, Colton McKivitz is arguably arguably going to be the guy who makes or breaks this game because Steelers pass rush is no joke. Niners aren't the team that necessarily starts hot in the beginning. They're a team that, like I said, it takes a little while to warm up. But I like the Niners -2. I'm gonna pick the Niners. Not overly confident, but yeah.
Yeah, and then just to add one more thing, so we one of the things we also do is our bold prediction of the week. So, my bold prediction for this week is Steelers win by 10 plus. So
Wow.
I know you don't like hearing that, but I think the Steelers come out hot. They're at home. They've got a lot of hype, and I'm a believer. I'm sorry, I said it. So there's my bold prediction of the week.
Okay, we got it.
It's bold for a reason, right?
It
Come
is
on.
bold. Next, I'm hoping we don't disagree on this game. We got Cardinals at Commanders. Uh, Commanders are 7-point favorites at home. Now, how you feeling about this game?
I like the Commanders. Do you agree?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. There's one. Yeah. I mean, I think all that needs to be said is Josh Dobbs. Like I think that's it. Like the I think the Cardinals are actively trying to tank. They didn't announce their starting quarterback until I think it got leaked yesterday. So like I'm not
Yeah.
even sure if they officially announced it. Like I saw a Twitter post and then like the NFL and ESPN kind of posted about it. So Josh Dobbs beat out Clayton Tune, the rookie, for the starting job. So um, yeah, I don't have too much positive things to say about the Cardinals, to be honest. I think Caleb Williams is going to be great for them next season. But on the Commander side,
If he declares.
yeah, if he declares, those are some crazy reports. But on the Commander side, I'm really excited to see Bieniemy in this offensive scheme. I know obviously they don't have a much better option at quarterback. They've got Sam Howell starting, but I think that Bieniemy is going to make it really easy for him. He does have some solid weapons. Terry McLaurin, I believe, was a full participant in practice today, so he's over the toe injury he suffered earlier in preseason. And then Jahan Dotson is a guy that I see having a huge sophomore season. I was bummed I didn't get him in any of my fantasy drafts. He's someone that I think is going to have a pretty big year. He had a pretty big rookie year, to be honest. So I like the Commanders in this one. I don't know many people that are going to pick the Cardinals, and for all the people that are in like survivor pools where you got to pick one team to win each season, from my brief knowledge, it seems like the majority of people in survivor pools are picking the Commanders because not a lot of faith in the Cardinals, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I don't think we have to spend too much time on this game. I agree with everything you said. Thought Howell looked pretty good in preseason, to be honest. Thought he looked confident, and he's got a really good supporting cast around him.
Yep. Okay. Takes us to our next game. We've got Texans at the Ravens. Texans were 9.5. I believe the line is 10 now. So I think it's Texans plus 10. This game to me, I think is a little more exciting than it might be to other people. I don't know if anyone remembers, but I was pretty high on the Texans last season. That didn't quite work out for me. They didn't hit their win total. But I like the Texans this year. I mean, I think D'Amico Ryan's a big addition. He was an incredible coach for the Niners. and they're clearly not tanking, right? Like we talked about the Panthers, they had the first overall pick. They took Bryce Young, but it's pretty clear that their team is still in tank mode, just so to say. But the Texans made it clear that they're looking or at least trying to win now. They drafted CJ Stroud and then they traded up to get Will Anderson, who looked great in preseason. So, and then I think Dameon Pierce is solid. Their O line is one of the better units in the NFL. So, that's what I got to say for the Texans. But then on the Ravens side of the ball, I'm really excited to see the Ravens offense this season. I think with the new OC, their offensive scheme is going to change a lot. I think you're going to see a more spread offense, which, you know, I think the offense they ran previously, and you could probably touch on the schematics of it a little bit better. But the offense they ran previously was kind of catered to Lamar, and it was a lot of two tight end formations, whereas play action helping Lamar run XYZ. But I think it's going to be much more spread out this year, maybe three receiver sets. And this is the first time we really seen Lamar Jackson with like true weapons on offense. Zay Flowers, by all accounts, looked great training camp preseason. Mark Andrews, hopefully he's healthy for this game. Odell, he's coming off an 18th month recovery for ACL, so he should have pretty fresh legs. And I think having a more spread out offense is actually going to help Lamar. Obviously, he's someone that I think, you know, there was always the joke that he's like a running back, but he's someone that does like to progress through his reads, first read, second read, and then if it's not there, he can take off. So I think them being spread out is going to help the passing game, but I also think it's going to help Lamar run, and it's going to create a little bit of a safer situation. I think he's going to stay healthier this season. I truly think that the way they're going to run this offense is going to be able, he's going to be able to keep himself a little bit healthier. What about you? Sorry, I just spoke for a little bit.
No, you're good. I agreed with everything you said. The difference between Todd Monk and their new offense coordinator and Greg Roman, I think that, you know, just like obviously Greg Roman's known for his ability to allow a running quarterback to be successful, but it seems like every year a defense figures it out, and then opposing offense, and then that offense isn't able to adjust to a defensive the defensive adjustment. I remember 2 years ago in that Miami game where they just felt like cover zero every single play, and then teams just did that, basically spazzed it, and Ravens had no answer. And Greg Roman's he's a great football mind, but I thought he had a difficult time adjusting mid-season. And in this Ravens offense, they're going to. I don't want to repeat what you just said, but I agree with everything you said. They're still going to run a lot of two tight end sets, but it's going to be more with the pass-oriented mind. Get the ball to Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely in space and allow those guys to cook. But I also agree with you about the Texans. I think they're a team at the least that will play hard for their head coach, and I think that will allow them to at least keep it within 10 points. The one matchup I'm really excited about in this game is Will Anderson, the third overall pick out of Alabama, Texans edge rusher against Ronnie Stanley, and the Ravens offensive tackles. I mean, it's a huge ask for a first game in the NFL, but I thought he looked really good in preseason. I love this college tape, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah, so I think you hinted at it. So are you taking the Texans plus the points?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
That's good.
I think this team's going to be a little bit better than people think this season. So I think they're able to keep it within 10. I'm excited for Dameon Pierce. I thought he had a pretty strong rookie campaign behind a pretty tough team just to run the ball. They're always down, so it wasn't great for him. So I think he's going to have a little bit more opportunity this year. And I think the defense is going to be feisty at the very least. So
Mm-hmm.
2 for 2.
That leads us into actually I have this as my favorite game of the week. Packers at Bears. Bears -1. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to be excited about, but I wanna get your take on it first now.
Yeah, I mean, great minds think alike, I guess. I also have this as my matchup of the week. I don't exactly think that it's going to be the best game, but I think it has the game, or I think it's the game with maybe the most question marks. Like the Bears have a lot of preseason hype. I think like Justin Fields is the most popular MVP bet, which is pretty hilarious. They added DJ Moore, so there's a lot of things to be excited about. And then the Packers have a lot of question marks, right? It's their first season without Aaron Rodgers. Jordan Love's coming in. It's a much younger team.
Yeah.
But I am excited to see LaFleur get to run his own offense. Like I think we even saw it a little bit in Hard Knocks. Like when you have Rodgers as your quarterback, it's a huge bonus. He's an incredible quarterback, but he changes so many things at the line. He has such a big input into what the offense looks like. So I think the Packers offense is going to look a lot different. I think it's going to be a full on Matt LaFleur scheme. You're not going to have the quarterback weighing in to what he wants pretty much on every play. And then, yeah, I thought Watson and Dobbs both had pretty strong rookie campaigns. Hopefully, they will be healthy. I know that they popped up on the injury report with hamstring injuries, so we'll see if that's real or not. But yeah, this is one of my favorite matchups of the week. Before I give the pick, I kind of want to hear your breakdown as well.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I think both these teams are sleeper teams that could potentially make a playoff push at the end of the year. Uh, and I was super impressed by it. Obviously, the Bears offense and DJ Moore and what he looked like for in the preseason, but also like I thought Jordan Love was quietly like him and Pickett were like the two best quarterbacks in the preseason this year.
Yeah,
He
completely
looked
agree.
incredible. I think he's just like and while like Rodgers got a lot of hate while or the Rodgers love situation got a lot of hate while Rodgers is there. I don't know if it's just because the cameras are on, but Rodgers looks like an awesome mentor for a quarterback, and having 3 years behind him, I believe it's going to set up Love to be in a pretty good situation. And my bold prediction of the week is that Jordan Love just like comes in and straight dominates, looks sharp, has at least 3 touchdowns. Um, and then also last thing I want to touch on was I'm gonna do this thing where every week I pick a player who's most important to the team's success. Kind of a mouthful right there, but I think Darnell Wright, the Bears rookie right tackle. I mean, last year Justin Fields obviously he was electric with his legs, but it's kind of because he had to. He didn't have any time. Bears had one of the worst offense lines in the league last year. Now they got Braxton Jones, who's coming into his second year, started playing well on the left side as well as Darnell Wright on the right side, who they drafted, I believe, 10th overall. He was my favorite offensive lineman in this year's draft. I think I'm really curious to see how he performs in his first ever game and the impact it has on Justin Fields and making him feel calm and collected and feel like he's able to stand in the pocket and make big time throws.
Well said. Um, I like the Packers to win this one. Or sorry, they're 1 point underdogs, but I think that they're going to come in and have a pretty solid game. I think the Bears are a little bit overhyped, and the market reflects that. So I like the Packers +1, but I also think that they're probably going to win this game.
I agree.
Sweet. That takes us to our next game. Maybe not the most exciting game, but we've got Raiders Broncos. Um, Hand up. I'm zigging when everyone's zagging. I think the Broncos are going to be better this year. I think that, I mean, obviously, there's not a lot of things they could do that would make them worse this year. But I don't think we can underestimate how big of an addition Sean Payton is over Nathaniel Hackett. Like a lot of times we talk about players in the offseason, but maybe outside of the quarterback and there's like select few guys that are truly game changers. The coach has got to be up there in importance, and Sean Payton's one of the best. Obviously, he sat back for a few years and was in the booth waiting for the right gig after his stint with the Saints. I think he's going to turn around, and I think that he just has like a no bullshit tolerance when it comes to Russell Wilson and kind of things that were able to go on last season. So I think the Broncos are -3 in this game. I like the Broncos to cover. And with that being said, I'm just low on the Raiders. Like we talked about Sean Payton being a great coach. I don't think Josh McDaniels is a great head coach by any stretch of the imagination. I like him as an offensive coordinator at times. But this is his second stint as a head coach, and it just doesn't feel like he fully has grasp of the locker room. And obviously they've got some question marks kind of all throughout their team. So I like the Broncos in this one. What about you?
Yeah, I think this game's gonna be a relatively low scoring game. And I don't want to spend too much time on it. I think Jimmy G's gonna look sharp. I think he'll and you kind of convinced me, to be completely honest. I just think the Broncos are a better team. It seems like there's a lot of shit going on with the Raiders, organizationally wise. Like, I don't know if you saw all the stuff going on with Chandler Jones, where he's posting on his
Yeah, I
Instagram.
hope he's all right. That looks like a mental health issue. So
Yeah,
praying for him. I hope he's doing all right.
100%. But I also like, it doesn't seem like everyone necessarily has that buy-in where that you really want going into a season. Um, I originally had the Raiders, but I think the I just think the Broncos are gonna be like just better, control the game, and I don't think it's gonna be like some crazy game, some super flashy game, but I think the Broncos are gonna take care of business and win this one as well. That leads
Sweet.
us, yeah, that leads us next into a game that I'm gonna let you talk a little bit more about. But Eagles are 4-point favorites going to Foxborough to play the Patriots. How do you feel about your Patriots this year?
Um, I feel good about the Pats, but I also don't think that they've got an easy route by any stretch of the imagination. I think they've got the hardest strength schedule in the league this year. A lot of that is because of the AFC East. So, they've got to play the Bills twice, the Jets twice, the Dolphins twice, who are all teams that have pretty high expectations. And then they've also got to play the Eagles out of division. So they've got a lot of tough games this season. I do think that they're going to be a lot better. I really think that they killed it in the draft. That's been kind of a sticky point for them, and maybe in the last 5 years. But last year they had a solid draft. This year they got Christian Gonzalez in the first round, who has had all positive reports throughout training camp. They drafted Marte Mapu, who's excuse me if I mispronounced
Yeah,
that, but he seems like he's going to be a great fit as like a versatile linebacker, maybe even safety. They've had him taking snaps at cornerback. So I think this defense is going to be awesome. I'm excited for the D line. They've got Barmore, Uche, and Matt Judon, and then Bill O'Brien coming in, a real offensive coordinator, which is going to be amazing. I'm so
yeah,
excited to not be the Matt Patricia offense anymore. But
yeah,
with that being said, I just think that the Eagles, they're such a solid team, and I think they got better in the offseason. I love their draft as well. And then today, I think it was reported that Jack Jones, one of the Patriots starting cornerbacks, um, had a hamstring injury. So I believe he's out for the first couple of weeks, which doesn't help when you're going up against A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. And then Jalen Hurts, their quarterback, obviously. So I think the Pats are going to be good this year. I just don't know how many wins they have on their schedule, to be completely honest. Um, and then as a homer pick, I'm taking the Pats +4, but I do not feel very strong about it. So
yeah. And I'm gonna disagree with you here. I think the Eagles are like, as much as I love the Niners, and I think the Eagles have the best roster in football. I think they're, and last year, even though they lost the Super Bowl, sure that I thought they played a really great game, and if it wasn't for a call at the end, I thought the Eagles could have been Super Bowl champions. I think the Eagles are going to come into the season and really just take care of business and cover that -4 spread. The one thing I'm looking really looking at in this game, or actually, I got two things. One, I'm really curious about Eagles defense. They're running with Sean Desai as their defense coordinator, and I'm curious to see how on the defensive line they're going to be playing a lot of gap and half scheme, but just how they rotate Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, and Fletcher Cox, and just like I can go on Nolan Smith, Hassan Reddick, and their entire defensive line. That should be interesting. And then offensively for the Patriots, you touched on it, Bill O'Brien. I want to see the effect it has on Mac Jones, and just like confidence in his decision making, confidence in his throws, and just like letting it rip. I know that's not really Mac Jones's game, but I just want to see him be confident and like have a process to go through, because it seemed like last year he was without one.
yeah, and obviously I'm pretty deep in the New England beat writer scene. So
Mhm.
kind of like you touched on, it does seem like Mac Jones has had a much better offseason. It seems like the offense is really like working with him. I think the biggest thing is the question marks at wide receiver, right? They've got a lot of guys that are good, but they don't have a distinct like number one guy.
100%.
Um, A rookie that I didn't touch on that I do want to touch on before the season starts in case he blows up is Demario Douglas. He was I believe, a 6th round pick out of Liberty. Um, and pretty much since the first day of training camp, it was nothing but rave reports. And then even in the preseason, he was getting the veteran superstar treatment. Like he wouldn't even play in preseason games. He played 1, 2 snaps and then he was out. Seems like they really wanted to keep him secret / keep him healthy. So if they can get either, him, Keishon Butte, who was projected to be a 1st round pick out of LSU and then had a tough junior season, so he slipped a little bit. If one of those two guys, and I like Kendrick Bourne, so really like one of two of those guys really needs to step up and kind of take over that, wide receiver one role. But I think it's going to be tough to do against this Eagles team, to say the least. So Patriots at home, -4. You've got the Eagles. I've got the Pats. Don't feel too strongly about my pick. If I wasn't a Patriots fan, I'd probably take them, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, next game we've got Dolphins at the Chargers. The Chargers are 3-point favorites at home. To be honest, this line didn't make sense to me. I'm a big believer in Mike McDaniels. They've got Vic Fangio now, who's one of the best defensive coaches in the league. I'm excited for what the offense looks like with a healthy Tua. They've got year 2 of Mike McDaniels running the offense. And to be honest, like the Chargers are at home, but I would expect that it's probably going to be close to 50-50. Dolphins, Chargers fans, Dolphins fans surprisingly travel very well. So, I like, and I didn't really touch on the Chargers too much, but I like the Dolphins a lot in this one, to be completely honest.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you again, which is good. And this is also like I think this is the best coaching matchup, like head to head. We got Mike McDaniel versus Brandon Staley. And Brandon Staley was the guy who was like responsible for slowing down the Dolphins last year with the way he had his DBs play with inside leverage and whatnot. Um, and Brandon Staley's also the predecessor of Vic Fangio, who's now the defense coordinator for the Dolphins, who took a year off. And supposedly he has a new defensive scheme, which, or rather, new coverage, which I'm looking forward to seeing. I don't even know what that means, but yeah, I'm really excited to see. And then against Kellen Moore, who's coming from the Cowboys, I'm excited to see the Chargers air it out. That was the big conversation last year, is with just like running stick, which is like basically a Madden play where everyone just curls and runs through curls and flat. Um, but yeah, I just want to see what the Chargers do with a more explosive offense. But I'm with you. I like the Dolphins. I think Dolphins are better than they were last year. More continuity in their system. I think continuity is a huge thing in the NFL. And I think Tua is only going to get better with Mike McDaniel in year 2.
Yeah, and this is a kind of a sidebar, but I do think that Tua will be able to stay healthier this year. I know that like people kind of scoffed at him taking like jujitsu and mixed martial arts lessons to quote unquote learn how to fall, but like speaking from like a little bit of experience, like I grew up um, playing a lot of action sports. So whether that was like skateboarding, surfing, snowboarding, like XYZ, like you learn how to fall. And I think that is like a truly valuable skill for any athlete to have. Like it helps you in so many different circumstances. So people kind of joked and laughed about those offseason reports, but I honestly think that because a lot of his concussions weren't these big hits, it was like being pushed after the play. And you saw him maybe trying to protect his hip because he had surgery after college, and he would kind of whip his head onto the ground because he wasn't really falling right. And then, so I think if he learns how to fall, I honestly think he'll be able to stay much healthier this season. It's obviously going to be a point of emphasis. But Teron Armstead, their best tackle, has already been ruled out for Sunday, so that is definitely something to think of. But you and I are on the same page. Both got Dolphins +3.
Yeah, and that we didn't really touch on it, but I mean, once again, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack against backup
Yeah,
left tackle. Uh, doesn't look great for our pick, to be completely honest. But moving on, we're gonna go to another to a division game, rather, NFC West. Seahawks -5 against the Rams. I like the like, as much as it pains me to say this, I think the Seahawks are gonna be really good this year.
I agree.
They only got better last year. They were kind of like the so-called like Cinderella team. But they only got better. They added Jackson Smith and Jigba. Uh, and I just think the Seahawks are gonna be good this year. Um, I'm curious to see how their secondary looks. Not curious in a bad way, but curious and like, oh, this could be like a special secondary with Devin Witherspoon, the 5th overall pick on the other side of Tariq Woolen, who was like runner up for defensive rookie of the year last year. Yeah, I like the Seahawks in this one. What about you?
Yeah, I love the Seahawks in this matchup. And then kind of going along that line, I think Geno Smith is going to be the player of the week. Um, Last season, and this also ties into, I think a new segment that we're going to try and do this week is I'll give out my favorite prop or favorite bet of the week. So this week I'm going with Geno Smith over 300 total yards. So that's rushing and passing. Last season against the Rams, he averaged 290 yards passing and 27 yards rushing. So he went over in both of the games last season. And I think the Rams secondary / the Rams defense as a whole is going to really struggle this year. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if the Rams are as bad, if not worse, than the Cardinals. The Cooper Kupp injury is alarming, and I think it allows them to effectively tank because if he's on IR and has this, there was a report that there's nerve damage, XYZ, so they put him on IR. I do think it allows Kupp and Stafford had that neck injury last season. They drafted a quarterback. I think there's a route in which the Rams look really bad this year, and not tanking because that's not the word we want to use, but essentially like air quotes tank. So, and like you said, I like the Seahawks a lot this year. I think that Geno Smith had a great year last season, and then they added Jackson Smith and Jigba, who is going to be healthy and playing week 1, which is surprising. And then they still have Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, drafted a rookie running back, also have Kenneth Walker. So I think that offense is going to look great against um, the Rams defense. So Geno Smith, player of the week, over 300 total yards as a prop. So, yep, there it is.
Yeah, I like it. Uh,
Okay, head to the next game. One of my favorite matchups this weekend, we've got Cowboys at the Giants. The Cowboys are 3.5-point favorites. This line confused me a little bit. Just for reference, last year on Thanksgiving, the Cowboys were 10-point favorites, and now they're 3.5-point favorites. And to be completely honest, I think the Cowboys got much better this offseason, so I think they improved more than the Giants did. I think they filled two pretty big holes, adding Stephon Gilmore, who didn't get a lot of national recognition because he was playing for a pretty tough Colts team, but he had an awesome season last year. And then another piece was who's going to be the wide receiver 2 behind CeeDee Lamb. And, make fun of him all you want, but Brandon Cooks has been an incredible receiver throughout his career. He's only 29 years old. I think he's only had one season where he hasn't had 1,000 yards. Like he's sneaky, very, very consistent, and a guy that quarterbacks continue to love. So I think the Cowboys are sneaky, have a chance of being the 1 seed in the NFC this year. I like them a lot. I think Dak's going to be much better. I think there's going to be a point of emphasis for him not to turn the ball over. Obviously, led the league in interceptions while missing 4 games last season. So I like the Cowboys. What about you?
yeah, I'm gonna disagree with you here. I like the Giants, dude. I think, and I've kind of harped on this, but continuity in a system, and this is Daniel Jones. Is going to be his second year in the system, for Brian Daboll, and I love how the Giants started last season. I think they're a team that knows how to start the season pretty hot, and they only got more explosive adding Jalen Hyatt, who I didn't honestly love coming out of college, but it seems like he's that explosive piece that the Giants were missing, that downfield threat, and a guy that you know Danny Dimes can take some shots with. Trayvon Diggs is, I mean, I know this is like something we always joke about, but he's not like he is. He can get got despite how talented of a DB he is. But I think the Giants are gonna be able to take some shots. And then offensively for the Packers, I'm just like I didn't see the reason why to get rid of Kellen Moore. I thought the Cowboys offense wasn't. I mean, I thought there was certain game management stuff that I didn't agree with, but I didn't. I thought the Cowboys offense was good. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I thought Dak had his own issues. So yeah, I like the Giants this year. I don't really necessarily agree with the Cowboys coaching changes. Um, yeah, I like the Giants.
Yeah. I also a couple things I didn't really touch on, and there's kind of one point for both sides. So I think the Cowboys are going to have one of the best defenses in the league this year, and I just think that Micah Parsons is one of, if not the best defensive player in the league. He's just absolutely incredible and a complete game wrecker. But then on the other side of the ball, like we talked about great coaches, and I think that Dable is going to quickly emerge as one of the better head coaches in the league. Guys love to play for him. The Giants improved drastically last season. I think Darren Waller is a guy
Oh
that's
yeah,
gonna have a big year. I was a huge fan of him, or a huge fan of him on the Raiders. Obviously, he was a little banged up last year, but I think that's going to be absolutely massive to have a real weapon at a receiving position for Daniel Jones. And then I do think that Daniel Jones is going to be a lot better this season. He obviously improved a lot last season. I think that he's going to be someone who maybe takes that Josh Allen-esque third-year leap. Obviously, he's a little bit farther along in his career, but when Josh Allen was what was it, like his third year in the season, where you really started to see him use his athleticism and it opened up the field everywhere else. He got Stephon Diggs. It helped him a ton. So I don't think that Darren Waller is going to have the same effect as Stephon Diggs, but I do think that Daniel Jones will have quite a big leap this year.
yeah, and Daniel Jones
Contract year for him.
totally. And Daniel Jones is one of those guys who like you can tell he was missing a tight end. He's a guy who he likes to favor the middle of the field and uses legs, extend plays out of the pocket. Darren Waller's the athletic tight end who can make plays after the catch if you get the ball to him in space. I think he's gonna calm Daniel Jones down, if that makes sense, right? There are times where he
Yeah,
gets a
it
bit
does.
antsy, and whatnot. Uh, and then, like I said, I don't want to keep harping on it, but year two in the Dayball system, I think he's only gonna get better. Um, I think we're both good on that game. Last game of the week, uh, probably the most hyped up game outside of the Chiefs Lions today is Bills 2.5 point favorites going to MetLife Stadium to play the Jets on Monday Night Football. I'm really excited for this one. There's no other way to put it. Um,
Yeah, I think you and I both had Bears Packers, but this is probably like on paper the best game of the week.
yeah, definitely. A few things I want to touch on. Just like there's like a matchup everywhere you look. And quietly, one of my favorite matchups is Garrett Wilson, who looks like who's going to be a dude this year, just as he was last year, against Trey White, who's coming back from a huge injury. But when Trey White's been healthy in the league, he's a top 5 corner. That's going to be awesome. And then on the other side of the ball, you can say the same thing about Sauce Gardner versus Stephon Diggs. I have a few questions with the Jets with how they split up carries between Brees Hall and Dalvin Cook. Think that should be just something to pay attention to.
It's interesting because both of those guys are like, obviously Brees Hall is coming off an injury, but so is Dalvin Cook. So like they kind of talked about it. There was a press conference where someone talked about it where they're probably going to be a pretty even carry. So I mean, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, but I think it's going to be as close to 50-50 as it gets because it's not like either of those guys are 100% healthy.
Yeah, and I kind of like when Dalvin signed there, I was kind of bummed out, to be honest, just because I like Brees so much, and I also like Dalvin, but I just think each have less opportunities, but I mean they're gonna be fresh throughout the entire game, and if you can get a guy like Dalvin Cook or Brees Hall in the game in the fourth quarter, and you need to run the ball to win the game, and they're both fresh, I think that's a great sign for your offense. Um, One of my bigger things that's going to go under the radar for the Bills is how they perform without Tremaine Edmonds at middle linebacker. It wasn't like he was it wasn't like he was like known as being like the Fred Warner, one of the best in the league necessarily, but I think that's gonna be a huge loss for the Bills defense. He's a guy who can run up the seam, play cover two, which is what the Bears brought him in to do. And just like be the rangy athletic linebacker that is so pivotal for this Bills defense, and they're going to be playing against a West Coast offense and the Packers, who stretch the field horizontally. I think that could cause some issues in that. For that reason, I'm going to take the Jets. I'm on the Aaron Rodgers hype train, and yeah, I'm taking the Jets this week plus 2.5, and I don't need to.
Interesting.
I like the Jets.
I'm gonna disagree with you here. I think that last season Josh Allen was well on track to be the MVP. I think he was a favorite for a large part of the season. Then obviously he had the injury and toughed it out and played the rest of the season, but by all accounts wasn't the same player. So I think that not only is Josh Allen healthier, but I think Gabe Davis is healthy too. He had a weird ankle injury where he kind of played through last season. And reports are that he's kind of recovered from that. So that's two big pieces on offense. And I do think they lacked a true second receiver last season with Gabe Davis being a little bit hobbled. And then I didn't really think about it like too much ahead of the pod, but you kind of had your most important player of the week to team success. And so I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what you said earlier, but I think Mekhi Becton for the Jets is
Yeah,
just as important as maybe Darnell Wright to the Bears because
totally.
their O-line looked very shaky preseason training camp. They even talked about it on Hard Knocks. So if he's a guy that can come in and play one of the two tackle positions and be the first round talent that he was just a couple of years ago, I think that would go leaps in bounds for the Jets. But on the other side, if maybe if he has another injury or he's just not playing well and that offensive line looks shaky, then I think it's going to be a long game and potentially a long season for Aaron Rodgers. So I like the Bills here, but I wouldn't be too surprised if the Jets got it done.
Yeah, yeah, that about rounds it up. Now you want to do a quick recap?
Yeah, so um, we've got a lot of disagreements this week. Jeremy's got the Bengals. I've got the Browns. He's got the Panthers. I've got the Falcons. You've got the Jags. I've got the Colts. You've got the Vikings. I've got the Bucks. You've got the Saints. I got the Titans. You have the Niners. I have the Steelers. So 5 straight games where we disagreed, but we both think that the Commanders, Texans, Packers, and the Broncos get it done against their respective opponents. And that again, this is all against the spread. And then you got the Eagles. I've got the Patriots. We've both got the Dolphins and Seahawks. Um, and then, sorry, I've got the Cowboys. You got the Giants. You've got the Jets. I've got the Bills. Underdog of the week, outright. This is outright winner. Jeremy thinks that the Panthers will get it done against the Falcons. I've got the Titans. And then for lock of the week, which is our favorite theoretical bet, we are actually going head to head on this one. He's got the Saints minus 3 points, and I've got the Titans plus 3. Bold prediction. Jeremy's got Jordan Love dominating the Bears with 3+ touchdowns. I've got the Steelers to win by 10+ points. Favorite matchup of the week. We both had Packers Bears. My player prop of the week is going to be Geno Smith, 300 total plus yards. And then Jeremy's most important player to team success. You're right, that is a bit mouthful, but he's got Darnell Wright, the rookie right tackle for the Bears against the Packers. So that wraps up week 1 of Between the Tackles podcast. I think this year we're going to be doing 2 episodes a week, question mark.
Yeah.
So we're going to try our best to do 2 episodes a week. Again, all of us are working and we do this for fun. So if we miss an episode here or there, apologies, but we're going to try and do a preview episode like this and then a kind of look ahead future matchup for the next week, or sorry, a recap of the Sunday games so that we can kind of make the podcast on Thursdays a little bit shorter where it's just a preview versus doing a recap and a preview in the same episode. So this is season 2 of the Between the Tackles podcast. Thanks everyone for listening. Jeremy, I will talk to you Monday.
All right, dude.
Enjoy the weekend.
Yeah, you too.